Georgia Tech has down Florida State in Dublin. We got to talk about it, man. Look, I did not expect Georgia Tech to go away. I also did not expect them to lose by double digits. However, when you're facing a Florida State program that has one of the best defensive lines in the sport, and we've been saying all these nice things about Patrick Payton, about Fentrell Cypress, about Mike Norvell, I have been talking about them being equally balanced with a chip on both shoulders, but they did not look chippy at all in this game at Aer Lingus. Georgia Tech was up against quite a bit, but I think what was undervalued is their offensive line and their ability to run the ball. Like, let's set the table with this, man. Now, Georgia Tech had won 12 straight against ACC opponents, but none of them were conference champion Florida State, let alone 13-0 last year, Florida State, Mike Norvell. And Florida State had beaten opponents that they were favored by double digits more in 15 straight games. This was supposed to be the game for which Florida State absolutely threw down a marker. Like, I had them as a number 5 team in the country going into this. They're not a top 10 team in this. And I'm really going to have to think about whether or not they're a top 25 team after this because the facts have changed. Georgia Tech showed up and showed that the offensive line and their ability to run the ball last year has remained. This is a program that averaged 203 yards on the ground last year and led the ACC in both yards on the ground per game and yards per rush at 5.4. I'm thinking, okay, Florida State's got something for that, right? We know that defensive line, we know that defense can hunt, but it did not feel like that defense ever found its footing against Haynes King and that rushing attack at Georgia Tech. They ran for 190 yards in this game, averaging 5.3 yards per carry, and Haynes King was an absolute man back there. I know that 15 for 54 does not sound like a bunch, but the way they're running QB power and the way that he was finding ways to extend plays, they even fumbled the snap with the game in the balance, damn near took themselves out of field goal range, and still they put it in the hands of a Kennedale, Texas high school kiddo, sophomore who had missed the field goal earlier and said, hey man, go win us the game, and they get the walk-off victory 24-21 in a conference game. So not only did Georgia Tech upset a number 10 team, a top 10 team for the first time since they last beat Florida State, they are now at the top of the ACC in the standings by virtue of winning this game in week 0. Outstanding game for Georgia Tech. Very excited for Rambling Wreck fans who looked like they were just going to go through it after that first drive. The way it started, Mike Norvell felt like he was in his bag. He had to be because the script that he put out there was working. They were mauling, mashing, using motions, using shifts to get that trio of running backs opportunities to gash that Georgia Tech defense. And at one point, I'm just going, both these defensive coordinators are probably going hoarse, just yelling at people because they were getting ran down. And there's nothing more debilitating, more torturous than a defense that cannot stop the run. And there is nothing more glorious than an offensive line that has just shown up to mash. And not for nothing, they stood up, man. Like, we watched Florida State tie the game after going down 21-14, 14-14 and a half, converting a 4th and 7 and a 4th and 8, and they get into the end zone. I'm thinking, okay, Florida State survives a scare. Not so fast. No, they do not survive a scare. Even though they pick up 2 of 3 4th down conversions, and they put together 291 total yards, I tend to look at this and I say, my goodness, man, are we undervaluing Georgia Tech? Are we undervaluing what they're about, who they are? I think we are. I think we're going to take a look at this game tape, and we're going to look at an offensive line that is absolutely positively about that work. We are looking at an offensive line that had damn near 200 starts together as a group. We're looking at an offensive line that doesn't care who the tailback is, even though Jamal Haynes is absolutely that dude back there. They're going to open up holes. They're going to push you off the ball. And if you can do that, you can win football games at any level. Full stop. At any level, against any program, at any time. I think Georgia Tech is finding their footing. Like, I had them 53rd in my 134. That is going to change, right? We do this again, that's not where they're going to be. I even thought that Florida State had flashed. They're better man-to-man across the board. Even the kicker, right? They had a kicker hit from 59. Like, when the game is in the balance and you need to take the air out of it completely, the thing that you're wanting to do, the thing that we all wish that Lincoln Riley would have done at Oklahoma, the thing that you want all great offensive coordinators to do, sit on the ball, right? Run the clock down, trust the offensive line, get to their blocks, and pick up the hard yards. And in the third quarter, the third quarter going into the fourth quarter, I'm watching Georgia Tech go 8 minutes, 24 seconds to just eat this clock. And I'm also watching a Georgia Tech program that was so utterly amazing at really limiting any big plays coming from Florida State until a little bit late. At one point, I was just commenting that Florida State had not trusted DJ Uiagalelei to throw the ball further than 6 yards through the air. And it was working for them because they were picking up stuff on the ground. But I kept looking at Mike Norvell going, when are you going to call a shot play? When are you going to call a play that gets Malik Benson in one-on-one and say, my guy's better than your guy? That never happened. I thought at one point, if you're Florida State, you got to take this game by the throat, and that came in the third quarter. You're not able to move the ball. You know that your defense is not able to stop the run. You got to let DJ Uiagalelei prove to everybody why he's a 5-star quarterback. The reason you went to go get him. These 40 starts don't mean anything if you can't go to Dublin against Georgia Tech, it's a good football team, not a great football team, and go get a W. But they were so much more physical than who they were playing against today, and it felt like Georgia Tech was doing all the things necessary to ensure victory, while Florida State was doing only what was necessary to try not to lose, right? And that was what was really coming through for me. I watched Brent Key trust his guys to go pick up the hard yards. And I watched, in the moment, Mike Norvell going, all right, I need to dial up something to where DJ can get somebody over the middle. And that worked from time to time, but it says something truly. When you can trust your offensive line to do the work, when you know that Haynes King is probably going to throw a bunch of TDs, probably going to throw a lot of INTs, we're going to need to run the football, you say to that group, you run this. And any program that is led by its offensive line is a good football program. It's why we harp on it. It's why I always say, don't tell me your opinion about your football team if you can't name the starting 5 on your offensive line, because then I know you're paying attention. I know you know what you have on that line. And so many times we run into this thing thinking that the skill players are going to matter so much more than they do. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you got a wide receiver that just can't be stopped or a running back that just can't be stopped. Today, you had an offensive line that just refused to stop. They kept mauling. 190 yards on the ground, 5.3 yards per carry after averaging 5.4 yards last year. The defense comes along just a little bit more. They're playing in the ACC championship game. Like, let's be clear about this. They held Florida State to 14 points, and that's after they went for 2 on the opening score. That's a good football team. I am excited to see what Georgia Tech has left. Now, they got a tough schedule. Like, Florida's on their schedule, SC's on their schedule. They're going to go through it, and we're going to get to find out for sure. But the one thing we know is this sort of a win is the one that can separate you when we talk about playing in the college football playoff. I think that is what Georgia Tech is going to say. You guys ranked them number 10. RJ, you ranked them number 5, and we absolutely beat them by a score on a neutral site, and it wasn't really that neutral because there's a whole bunch of Florida State fans in the stadium there. Kudos to Georgia Tech. Outstanding, out-physical Florida State. A lot of people can't say that, and they're going back across the pond with a W.